Hey everybody, Paul Turner here from thediscipleproject.net, and I thought I'd do something different here today and post a video that I actually recorded on Facebook Live. I did an interview with a gentleman named Sean Tice, and he has a ministry to the fatherless. And so I thought, man, what a great piece of content here that I would love to share with you guys. I would love your comments, your ideas, your thoughts of how you're dealing with the subject of fatherlessness in your youth ministry. As one who has been impacted by fatherlessness himself, I understand the roles of good youth workers, good camp counselors, all of which made an impact upon my life, and maybe made an impact upon yours. So I would love your comments, your thoughts, your ideas, right down there in the comments below. So check out the interview, and then don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all that kind of good stuff. There'll be a link at the end of the video, and or you can just subscribe right down there. So thanks for hanging out today. Appreciate you guys being here, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.
All right. Welcome in, everybody. I am now here with my guest, Sean Tice, and Sean is a youth pastor down in Venice, Florida, where he worked with students there. And Sean has a ministry there as well, where he talks and shares about fatherlessness. And welcome into the Facebook Live and the podcast today, Sean.
Excited to talk to you about this. We've been doing this ministry for about 10 years now. And so you want me to tell about it a little bit to your audience? Or
Yes,
okay.
Please tell me your journey and tell us your website.
Lifefactors.org.
Life Factors. That's
yeah,
it.
lifefactors.org. Yeah.
Lifefactors.org, and tell us about your journey. Yeah,
okay.
Tell us about your journey and why this ministry of fatherlessness is so important to you.
Yeah, I was about 10 months old. My dad left, and I was fatherless from 10 months old until actually right after that, my grandfather stepped in, but I was fatherless. I didn't have my birth dad around. He left. We grew up in Pennsylvania, as I said earlier, but he moved to Las Vegas, where he was from, his hometown, and never came back. And so I was blessed to have some mentors, some grandparents who stepped into my life, and then mentors in my local church. And kind of the mentors brought me the whole way through. I mean, they brought me the whole way through, up through to even college. And even to this day, I have a guy named Jim that's like my dad. His name's Jim Beckenbaugh, and he just has filled the gap for me. And what we're doing through this ministry is trying to help other teenagers, children, young adults experience the same thing that I was able to experience. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I made mistakes. I've had struggles. Believe me, it has not been perfect, but God helped me get through being fatherless. And so in 2008, my wife and I started a nonprofit ministry for fatherless families to encourage them. It's called Life Factors Ministries, lifefactors.org. And what we do through Life Factors is we do 4 different things. We help fatherless families in 4 different ways. The first thing is spreading awareness. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of our social issues that are happening in our country, such as homosexuality, abortion, drug and alcohol addiction, suicide, high school dropouts, even overcrowded prisons, with the mass murders that are happening, even the Las Vegas shooter, a lot of these times, not all the time, but a lot of the times, these come from fatherless homes. And a lot of people, they get upset about these issues that are going on with fatherlessness. They get upset about gay marriage or abortion and stuff, but they don't understand that the root of the problem a lot of times is these kids are fatherless and they're growing up without a guide. They're lacking a guide in their life. They're lacking that dad, and then they end up falling into these things or partaking in these different lifestyles. And so we spread awareness about that. We also go in and engage people to get involved in churches and conferences and seminaries and schools and try to get people to get involved in these kids' lives. And so you want me to keep going, tell them more about our ministry, or do you have any questions? Or
Well, let's go ahead because I'm going to save time on the end for that for you
okay.
to go into all that.
Okay.
Because I want actually it's actually baked into the questions here,
okay.
because you're going to tell me in a little while how to connect with churches. But something I'm sure people want to know too is how is it? And you mentioned some of these things, but how are you seeing fatherlessness, maybe even on a local level, how it's impacting communities? Maybe even your own community.
Well, I mean, it is a national epidemic. We've estimated there's about 30 million fatherless individuals in the United States alone, and so it's impacting everybody. I mean, if you go into your community and you're seeing crime happen, and you're seeing, even the Las Vegas shooting that happened, even the school shooting that happened down here in Florida. That people say he wasn't fatherless, but he actually was. He was adopted, and then his dad died, and then his mom died. And so he had a lot of personal struggles. And so we're seeing it all over the country. And every time, to be honest with you, I'm kind of weird like this, but every time something like this happens, I Google, like, okay, what was this person's home life like? Because about 9 times out of 10, they grew up fatherless, or they had some type of jacked up home life situation. But usually it's because of fatherlessness. And, James 1:27 talks about how, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless. Some translations say orphan. But if you look at the root of that, it's talking about lacking a guide. And so when these kids are, they're lacking one of their guides in their life, whether they're motherless, fatherless, or both, whether they are an orphan or motherless or fatherless, they're off balance. And so we see an off balance in their life. And if nobody comes in to fill that gap, to help fill that balance, they end up falling into all kinds of stuff. And so as Christians and as churches, our job is to help them out. And so we're seeing a lot of negative effects in our communities. And as I listed off earlier, it's happening. A ton of stuff's happening. If you don't see fatherlessness around you, you're not looking. I mean, honestly, it's all over.
You're not paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not paying attention. I agree, because a lot of the struggles I see in our youth ministry and youth ministries I've been a part of is that these kids that are getting in trouble do not have that man in their life, maybe, that is help, at the reins. Somebody's the horse is just running wild because there's nobody guiding the horse. Nobody's got a hold of the reins there at all. And what I'm finding too is in these communities, in these places that we are seeing, I mean, I just myself as an example. I mean, I grew up without a father. My dad passed on when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my mother, God bless her, was ill-equipped. She just was.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, look, and this is nothing against single mothers. Single mothers, God bless single mothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Without them, we would be in a world of hurt. But my mother, on a whole level, was ill-equipped to deal with me as a young man. My mother, not every mother, my mother was ill-equipped to deal with that. And so, and because of that, I went through my own series of this, wild horse episodes of just inability to have any reins. And for me, it was the same thing as with you, is that I had, youth pastors, camp counselors, guys that would have to supplement, what was not there for me in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if at that time, I mean, that's the role I see, at least in my life, the role the church had in my fatherlessness was to have a good youth pastor. That's a good role. But how are you seeing the church handle fatherlessness? Is the church doing a good job? What else could it be doing to make a difference as you can see it? I mean, maybe you give me some examples of how churches are doing well, or maybe what the churches aren't doing at all.
Well, it just depends on church. I mean, some churches are they're doing their best to do what they can, but I think a lot of pastors are going into this ill-equipped. I mean, they're just not sure how to minister to these families, and so they're in Bible colleges and seminaries, they're not teaching about this. And so that's one thing our ministry is trying to change, is we're working on going into colleges and seminaries and stuff and talking about these issues, because these pastors, which is great, they grow up in good homes a lot of times, not all the time. I mean, you and I are the example of that, but a lot of times they grow up in decent homes, and then they're just not sure how to help these families. Or they know one situation, like me, I grew up without a dad, and I grew up with my grandparents, but they don't know the other situation, so they're just not sure how to deal with them. So there's a lot of gaps between fatherless families. Some churches out there are doing a great job. They have mentoring programs set up. They're trying to help the fatherless. They're working to do what they can, but there's always room for improvement on it. And we found that fatherless ministries is organic. It's an organic thing. It's not something you can put in a box. It's not something that you can be like, you have to do it exactly this way or this way. It's more of a take each relationship at a time. And that's kind of how we do it. That's how we do it at our ministry. We try to help each individual kid in a different way. And that's how we encourage other churches to do it, in an organic way, not in a box. Not, I don't want to put it, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a great program, but they're struggling to find mentors because they put it, it's honestly, it's all in a box. It's to do it exactly this way. This is how it has to be done, which they have to do that with background checks and everything. But in the church, we have a little bit of an ability, because their kids are already here. They're already at church. You can, maybe spend some time with them while they're here. But the thing is, every home's different. Every family's different. Every church is different. And so there's some churches out there doing a great job. Some of them aren't doing anything. And the majority aren't doing anything, let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yes, let's be honest. They're not. But what would you recommend then? What I mean, other than having life factors in yourself, come into the church and teach them all about what to do in these cases there. But maybe you have some general principles. Because I having grown up without a father, when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, and I was youth pastoring, I had immediate connection with somebody who. That's just my background. That worked out for me. But you got guys that, maybe they come from great families. Maybe they don't have a ton of issues as far as that goes. What are some general principles, though, that churches could even begin to grasp, or at least wrap their arms around, to at least starting to address some of the issues that are in their own community or in their own church? Let's start with that. I mean, the community is one thing, but I mean, at least addressing fatherlessness in their own church.
Yeah, what I would do, and this is what I recommend, is doing a community evaluation. And basically, who's in your church right now, and do an evaluation on those families. What kind of kids do we have? Do we have one single mom? Do we have 10 single moms? Do we have a couple grandparents raising their grandkids? Do we have a couple fatherless children, a couple fatherless teen girls and guys? And you have to kind of figure out who you have first and do an evaluation on your church. Even if it's a small church or a large church, do an evaluation, figure out what you have, and then you kind of go from there to kind of tailor the needs that you have. So if you have like a bunch of fatherless teen girls, you don't want that to be head up by the youth pastor. I mean, you want that to be a ministry that is run by the youth pastor with his wife and with other women, and it'd be a safe program for them, because honestly there's a lot of disgusting things happening in our churches with girls being taken advantage of, and a lot of times these girls are the ones that are vulnerable for that, so we have to protect them in that. So really it begins with an analysis of who's in your church and what you're dealing with. And if you don't have any fatherless kids in your church, look in your community, maybe do like a map, a couple miles around your church, 5-mile radius, and just be like, okay, what kind of families do we have around here? Do we have a bunch of grandparents raising their grandkids? Okay, we have that. That's an outreach we can do. Let's go ahead and have a grandparents raising grandkids ministry and invite them in, give them a free dinner, do free babysitting for them, and give them a session on encouraging them that they can help these kids make it. There's ways you can do that. We offer that in our online training, trying to help churches. And I'm not trying to sell it, but I mean, we're just so passionate about helping them. So we have
please do, because there's so many that need to know that this is a resource that's available to them. Because a lot of you pastors are sitting around going, who am I going to call for this?
Yeah.
I have no way of implementing this.
Yeah, that's the thing. And there might be somebody in your church that is passionate about it, and they might be willing to do it. I mean, I just talked to a youth pastor the other day, and he said his mom is heading up a single mom ministry, and she was a single mom. And so there might be somebody that, in your church that's passionate about the topic, that they've been discipled, they know they can run the ministry, because you don't want to give it off to somebody that's not a new Christian, that's totally new and wet behind the ears. They have no idea. You want to give it to somebody that's, very experienced. But I mean, there's so many different ways you can do fatherless ministry, whether it's, as I said, grandparents raising grandkids, a single mom ministry, working with fatherless teen girls, teen guys, fatherless children. It just depends on your situation, and that's how we try to recommend to churches. Look at your situation, figure out what you have, and then you can kind of do a custom type of thing, and don't make it in a box. Okay, this is what our church can handle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you make a such a great point too, Sean, because fatherless guys, fatherless girls, there are two different ways of handling those things, right? Mm-hmm. And I would not. I mean, God, has helped me out, and where you deal with young ladies in your church, you're scared to do anything about that. You just don't want to. You don't even want to go near it. You're like, man, I got no answers for this young lady because of various reasons. Where if your wife wants to get involved and things like that. So you just make a great point. Youth pastors, you need to get your wife involved in some of those situations, to where you're not taking on daddy roles that you don't need to take on, right? So let's get into that then. Let's get into where your organization and lifefactors.org does this work here. When you come in, the first thing you said you do, you help the church do an assessment of what they have and what they're doing. Give me some other things. Kind of walk me through the process to, if somebody on this, whether through the podcast or through Facebook Live here, says, okay, so what can I expect that if I bring Sean in, and what is this process going to look like? How are we gonna do a better job?
Well, we're able to. I mean, we can cater our speaking to a couple different ways, and we've been doing this for 10 years now. So we're able to do family conferences. We can do a single moms events. We can do grandparents raising grandkids events. We can do a public school assemblies in your local public school, and then do like a teen event at the end of the week, where it's just more general messages. But really, you can do it. You can have us come in and speak, or we can do it another way where you can just go on our fatherlessministry.com. We created this whole training site, fatherlessministry.com, that we really was for our partner churches, because we felt like we were becoming partners with churches and not giving them anything in return. And so we created this website that is fatherlessministry.com, and churches can either sign up and pay monthly for it, or they can be a partner church, just take us on as a missionary. And what they get in return is, I mean, it's pretty awesome. And they get a lot of stuff in return. They get 6 main topics. So we have fatherless children, mentoring, grandparents raising grandkids, fatherless teen girls, fatherless teen guys. And then we have a couple bonus topics like blended families, divorced families, motherless families, stuff like that. And in each one of those topics, the 6 main topics, we have master classes, video master classes. We have ministry guides that talks about, what it is to be like in these families and be in these situations, to help you understand them. We give practical tips in ministry on how to do ministry in this way. We give our PDF downloadable books, so you can download our children's books. Like we have, just give you some ideas. We have a teen girls devotional book my sister and I wrote together on growing up as a teen girl. It's a 30-day journey. You can use that as a small group, a mentoring guide. You can use that as a resource to just give to them as a devotional book. We have one for single moms, same thing, 30-day journey. It's got a bunch of small group discussions in it. And then we also have one for teen guys, and this has my stories in it. And these are downloadable in the site for free. You can print them off as many times as you want and give them out to the kids in your church. We also have our children's books in there too. We have Paul and Penelope, Daniel and Dana, the Fatherless Dinos. Shows them that they can have a heavenly father. We have Paul and Penelope, the motherless penguins, and shows them that they can have that God loves them, because a lot of motherless kids, they feel unloved and they lack security in that. And then the Eli and Ella, the little elephants. This is for foster care and orphan kids. And we're going to be having a bunch more of these books coming out. We have stuffed animals to go with these. So like if you know of a kid that's going through that, you can get an elephant and a little book and give it to them, encourage them. Same with the dinosaurs and the penguins. So that's a couple of the resources we have in that site. And we can, then we also have expert interviews of people that are experts in these topics, because we don't claim to know everything about this. And so we have expert interviews with different authors and pastors and stuff that are experienced with these issues. You can go in there and listen to those MP3 files. And then lastly, another thing we offer is we give everybody that signs up, we give them a $30 promo credit every month for our online store. So they can go and they can buy, they can get children stuffed animals, they can get God Is My Dad t-shirts, they can get devotional books, children's books, every month, $30 worth of stuff, and we ship it to them for free at their church. And so we're just trying to help churches do a better job of reaching fatherless families. As I said, I grew up without a dad, so I'm just really passionate about this. And we're just doing what we can to help churches get involved, because we've seen a huge gap between fatherless families and churches, and that's why we have such an epidemic of social issues in our country, and a lot of them coming from fatherless homes. So that's our training site, fatherlessministry.com. It's a ministry that is created for anybody that partners with us, gets it for free. But then we charge a monthly fee. You can sign up on the website for that.
Give the website again. Where can they go to get that?
Fatherlessministry.com.
Okay. Because I also saw a website, God Is My Dad.
God Is My Dad. Yeah.
I heard you mention
That's another thing. Yeah. God Is My Dad right there. Keep calm, because God Is My Dad. That's a resource for fatherless families directly. Because when we've been doing ministry, we were trying to convince pastors for several years, hey, got to do something about this, got to do something about this. And it was like we were banging our head against the wall. I'm just being honest. And after I became a pastor myself, I've been a youth pastor for a little over 5 years now. After I became a pastor myself, I realized, they have a ton of other people pushing things at them. And so I understood why it felt like that. So that's why we started creating things that could partner with them and help them do easier ministry, but also going right at the fatherless and trying to encourage them. And so we have godismydad.com. It's an app you can download from the Google Play or Apple Store. And what's in there is videos from Christian ministry leaders to encourage fatherless families. We have where they can share their story and they can read stories of others. We have in there how-to videos and articles that they can read and watch. We have a devotional book coming out on there. And we also have merchandise too. God Is My Dad stickers. We have God Is My Dad t-shirts. We have lanyards. We have, and if they share the story, they get a free lanyard. We'll mail it to them. We have our books on there. Just trying to make a a brand of God is my dad. I can have safety in God. I don't have to live in fear because God's my dad, and really just pushing that on. Because honestly, that's what saved my life. God became my dad and helped me. And so we're just trying to help others with this. I would love to have had something like this when I was a teenager, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, we're born out of time, Sean, because, I mean, I needed you to have this ministry 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was, a young man, and I needed you then. But like you said, though, the local church is doing the best at what it knows how to do. It's trying to figure itself out. It's trying to meet needs. And if it wasn't for youth pastors, because I had 3 really good youth pastors in my life who walked me through processes, who helped me with difficult things, that I would not otherwise, by the grace of God, would not have otherwise been able to do that. So I think, first of all, I would say that churches, you need to hire yourself a good youth pastor who can do that. I remember too, and it just always stuck with me. I wish I could remember his name now, but the former leader of I think TBN, and he had wrote a book that the book title always stuck with us, is I Had No Father But God. And in reality, that's, for guys like me who grew up, I mean, I knew no other. When I read verses in Psalms where it says that God is a God to the fatherless, when I read things like that, man, that quickened me. That quickened my spirit, because that's where I had to find new identity. I says, okay, if I don't have an earthly father and I got a bunch of mentors, where can I look then to find then the source of who's going to guide me now? And that's true. Even as, maybe you've discovered this, even as I get older, right? I'm turning 50 this year, and I couldn't be more grateful that God is my father, because there's, the older you get, you lose those father figures to some degree. I mean, when you're young, everybody wants to help you. When you're 50, you're like, come on, man, you got to figure this out. Like, no, don't leave me. Don't leave me. I still need help. But the good thing is that God is still our father. That even that wound never goes away. Yeah. In reality, because you don't have somebody to pick up that phone and go, hey, I'm 50 and maybe you're 75, Dad, right now, or whatever. But, you still need those, for the long haul, for the long journey that you're going to have in your whole life, that's a thing that just never goes away for you. Do you find that to be true for your own life?
Oh, yeah. I've been actually doing a lot of, I guess say research, but in my devotions, I've been focusing on that a lot. I've been reading the book, John Eldredge, called Father by God. Great resource. And then there was a devotional on YouVersion on the Bible app that's called Wild Life. And I recommend it for anybody that's listening to this, that's, kind of dealing with lack of security as a man and trying to figure out as a dad. Honestly, because it tells John Eldredge is in there. And I didn't know much about him before I started reading that book and then doing this. I've never read Wild at Heart. I know that's terrible, but I know I never read it. I never read it, but but I'm starting to be a John Eldredge guy, because he talks about how we just need to embrace being sons and daughters of God and let God father us. And I love that concept, because I struggled with that for years. I have mentors, but there's still a little bit of that hole in me. It's like, man, I wish I had been taught this or that when I was younger, and I feel insecure and I feel inferior to other men and different people. And, I don't need to feel like that. God's my dad, and God's going to provide for me. God's going to guide me. God's going to bring into my life the stability, the resources that I need, the encouragement that I need, if I just rest in him. And that's really something God's been working on my heart lately about.
Well, that is a great word. And anybody, if you're listening to this via the podcast or watching via the Facebook Live, all the links and everything else, I will put all that in the show notes for the podcast and down below for the Facebook Live. So you'll be able to reach Sean and hear about these resources. Let's go back to the local youth worker real quick. Because once again, local youth workers are not psychotherapists. They're not psychologists. They're not, they don't have any kind of, like you said, they're not being taught in seminaries or Bible colleges or things like that. Everything is very much experience driven of where they're at in their life. What are some simple things that a youth pastor can do that if he has kids who are fatherless in his youth ministry, what are some general principles of a way? Because I know sometimes youth pastors can be super eager, right? They can be like either super like, hey, dude, I want to be in your life and all this. And maybe that's a little freaky, a little weird for maybe that kid. It's like, hey, okay. But maybe you have some simple tips for the youth worker right now. It says, look, I grew up with a dad. I have a great family, various things. How do you suggest that they approach the issue of fatherlessness in their own youth ministry?
Well, I mean, I would start with making sure I mean, obviously most youth pastors do this, but get to know those kids that are coming every Wednesday. Get to know those kids. I mean, let them talk to you and kind of figure out what kind of home are they coming from. I mean, are they coming from a fatherless home? Is it a, back and forth between mom and dad type thing? Because there's so many different situations, I said before. I mean, you come across so many things as a youth pastor, and so be sensitive to those different types of relationships that they have at home and kind of figure it out. Also, while you're doing that, try to figure out ways you can in your community, because some schools will let you come in for lunch. That's a great opportunity to go in and sit with a kid one-on-one in a secure environment, because we're being told even now, like, don't ride alone in the car with even a couple teenagers at one time. I mean, insurance companies are saying don't. So you look for those opportunities that you can go and be with those kids, but on a safe place. Like our middle school here will let us come in and have lunch in this outside area where it's still, there's cameras and it's all secure, but we can speak one-on-one to those kids if we want to. And look for those opportunities where you can go and pour into that kid's life. I mean, just easy opportunities like that, as simple as having a lunch. Go take those, take the kid a Starbucks frap or something, and he could be the kid with the Starbucks frap at lunch, and they feel like they're cool. You know what I'm saying? Or bring them a box of tacos. I mean, honestly, and just do it like once a month, and just be in their life. Just simple ideas like that. And don't ignore that they are fatherless, because they want to talk about that. They want you to recognize them, not bringing it up in front of everybody, but they want you to go to them individually and talk to them about their individual situation, because they want to know that you care about what they're going through. So don't be scared about that. It's one of those things where, we people have, maybe children that have, taken their life or have passed away, and you find out that people are scared to go and talk to them about that situation. And that's the same with these kids. Maybe their dad passed away. Maybe their dad lives in another state. Maybe their dad's incarcerated. Maybe their dad lives down the street and doesn't care about them. They want to talk about that, and they want to ask your advice on that. They want to ask you questions about that. They want to be involved in that. So don't be scared to bring it up. I mean, honestly, don't be scared, and just go to them, straight to them. And then I know if you didn't grow up fatherless, you might be nervous about the situation. Don't treat them like they're weird, but don't be afraid to discuss what they're dealing with, because they need to talk to somebody about it. Makes sense? I would start there. Just start building that organic, like I said, that relationship. Don't make it fit into a box. I've tried that before, where I was like, we're going to start a mentoring program at our church, and we're going to, it doesn't work. It didn't work. I mean, at least for us, it didn't work. Some places, they have the resources. They have tons of volunteers. They have tons of resources to do that. The average church doesn't have that. And so we have to do what we can.
Right. And I think you make such a good point there too. I think genuine curiosity, right? Say, look, if I'm from a healthy home, I come from help me understand. Where can I best serve you? Right. I mean, so many times the youth pastor sadly has to play the hero, like as if they have all the answers. And the best approach is to not have all the answers. The best approach is to say, look, man, I have zero idea where you're coming from. I am lost in that, and I want to help. Just tell me your story, and where can I fit in on that? I'm not trying to be anything or be anybody. I'm just trying to be a dude that's, just trying to be helpful if I can. And if the only thing I can do is listen, then that's the best thing I can do, is just listen to you, tell me your story of, what's going on, and how I can be a part of that, if I can, how I can be any assistance to you. Say, look, if you need help, there's so many kids too. There's another, you're talking about all these various conditions. You can have a man in your house and still be fatherless.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've seen that many times.
I think that's almost the hardest version of that, because the others are all cut and dry.
Yeah.
The other ones that's evident. That's there. The problem is that when a kid has a dad in the home, but they're still fatherless, that's not training them up, that's not helping them out, that's not giving them, the things they need. I had a young man last night share in youth group. He's from a program, and he came in and talked about this struggle with his dad, that he had no idea what love was. He had zero idea what love was because his dad treated him like such garbage. And that's his image of a father. That was his image of what a father does. It shames you and embarrasses you, and you are then completely lost as to then your own self to say, what kind of father am I going to be? What kind of man am I going to be? What kind of husband am I going to be? And so it's like you said, man, all these vary across the spectrum as far as, you know, what kids are in. And so, but Sean, I want to say that first of all, I want to say thank you for you know, joining me. We've worked on this, trying to get this together, but this interview together. But man, I'm telling you what, in this short amount of time that we've spent together, I just think if a youth pastor will at least get in touch with the organization, at least see what you have to offer. I'm telling you what, I think youth workers in churches can up their game a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Whatever they can handle, whatever they can do. There's enough that you have, I think, from the smallest church to the largest church, they can find something to help.
Yeah.
Even if it's a youth worker individually who says, I want to help. I love that I have so many friends of mine who are foster parents who could benefit from having that book. And it's just a storybook, right? It's just something you read to kids, right?
Yep.
Wow, so powerful. What a resource to have just for foster families, to have that book in the home, that you have that kid for a short amount of time. My wife and I were short-term, you know, caretakers, if you will, or in the foster system for a short time for a specific incident. Man, I wish I would have had that book. I wish I would have had that book to read to that kid during that time to say, look, let me impart something to you, something really simple that will affect some other things. So as we wrap up here, Sean, just tell a little bit about, how can they contact you both on your website, things like that, but also on social? Maybe they want to hit you up here on Facebook or other places, how they can continue the conversation with you to talk about this really, really important issue.
Okay. Yeah. You can go to lifefactors.org. That's our main website. We started Life Factors Ministries about 10 years ago. And so that's our hub of information. And then we have godismydad.com off of that. We have fatherlessministry.com off of that. You can email me at Sean Tice, S-E-A-N, like Sean Connery. That's what my dad named me after.
Really?
Yeah, Sean Connery. S-E-A-N-T-E-I-S.
Well, your dad left you with one good thing.
Yeah, there
right?
you go. Exactly. Sean, S-E-A, he was a big, I guess he was 007 fan. I don't know. But S-E-A-N-T-E-I-S at lifefactors.org. Or you can message me on Facebook. You can message one of our pages. We have God is My Dad page on Instagram, on Facebook. And we also have a Life Factors page. It says Life Factors, and it says Leading Fatherless Families to the Heavenly Father. And so you can like those pages, and we put out content on those. But that's really our main. I have Twitter, but I still don't really use it. So, you know, it's like, it's just not my thing. But if you want to write me on Twitter, maybe I'll find it eventually. Yeah. So that's how you can get a hold of me. But yeah, check out our stuff. And if you want to message me for a promo code, I'll give you, you know, I don't have anything like official right now, but I can send you like a 15% off coupon code for our fatherlessministry.com. If anybody's interested, I'll email it to you or message you on Facebook with it, and we can get started and getting Fatherless Ministry going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sean, thanks again. Appreciate you being here on Facebook Live and via the podcast. If you're listening to this via the podcast, by the way, I want to thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you being a part. Be sure that if you enjoy this podcast, please go ahead and buy iTunes. Go by there and leave a little review. Leave some stars. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to share it with somebody. And that way people can be a part of the podcast just like you are a part of the podcast today. And that's it for today, guys. I appreciate you guys being here, and I will talk to you guys next time.